The old ranger's voice was low and gravelly, the kind of voice that came from years of whiskey and campfires. He stared into the flames, his eyes reflecting the flickering light. "You boys want to hear a story?" he asked finally. We nodded, eager. The night was dark, the trees towering above us like sentinels. We were deep in the woods, the kind of deep where your GPS doesn't work, and you start to wonder if you'll ever find your way back. "This ain't no ghost story," the ranger said, his voice dropping even lower. "This is about the Shadow Man." He took a long drag on his cigarette, the ember flaring bright. "It started back in 1920. Folks would come up to the park to hike, just like you boys. But every full moon, people would disappear. At first, nobody thought much of it. Figured they just got lost, maybe fell off a cliff, or got attacked and dragged off by a bear. But then the hearts started showing up." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Hearts, just sitting there in the dirt, surrounded by this symbol, like something out of a damn ancient nightmare. Nobody knew what it meant, but everybody knew that whatever it was and symbolized was filled with a dark, twisted evil. He took another drag, his eyes glinting. Those that swear they've witnessed something deep in the woods that they simply couldn't explain started calling it the Shadow Man, said it was tall, unnaturally built, and made of shadow and darkness. All you could see were these little yellow eyes, glowing like embers. It had stalked through the woods, quiet as a ghost, and then you'd hear the screams. He shook his head. Nobody ever saw it happen, but they'd find the hearts the next day, always in the same symbol, always with that same ritual look, like it was trying to tell us something, but we never figured out what. He stubbed out his cigarette, his movements abrupt. "That's the story of the Shadow Man. Been happening every full moon since 1920, and we ain't never caught a break. No bodies, no witnesses, just the hearts and the symbol. Some folks say it ain't human, that it's something out of an Indian legend. Others say it's just some crazy person living out here in the woods." He looked at us, his eyes hard. "But I'll tell you this, boys. I've been a ranger for 20 years, and I've seen some shit. I've seen bears maul people. I've seen folks fall off cliffs. But I ain't never seen nothing like the Shadow Man. That's a different kind of evil, a kind that'll freeze your blood in your veins." He stood up, his joints creaking. "You boys be careful out there. Don't go wandering off, especially not at night. And if you see them yellow eyes, just run. Run like hell and don't look back." He walked off into the darkness, leaving us staring at the fire. We didn't say much the rest of the night, just sat there listening to the sounds of the woods. And even though we didn't say it out loud, we were all thinking the same thing. We were thinking about the Shadow Man. The next morning we packed up our gear and got moving. We hiked hard, trying to put as much distance between us and the ranger's camp as possible. The woods were quiet, the only sound the rustling of leaves and the creaking of trees. It was peaceful, the kind of peaceful that makes you forget about the dangers. But as the sun started to set, I could have sworn I saw it. Just a flash of yellow out of the corner of my eye. I spun around, my heart pounding, but there was nothing there, just trees and shadows. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a bird or a reflection or my imagination running wild. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I glanced around, but the other guys were oblivious, too caught up in their own thoughts. I saw it again an hour later. This time, it was closer, just a pair of yellow eyes staring out at me from the darkness. I spun around, my mouth opening to yell, but then there was nothing, just trees and shadows and that endless green. My heart was pounding now, my senses on high alert. I glanced around, but the other guys were still clueless. I thought about saying something, but what was I going to say? "Hey guys, I saw some yellow eyes." They'd just think I was spooked. So I kept quiet, just kept hiking and tried to keep an eye out. But it's hard to watch everything, especially when you're hiking uphill. And that's when I saw it again. Closer this time, the eyes staring right at me through the brush and shadows of the old thick trees. And then I saw the shadow, just a glimpse of it, a towering figure looming up behind the trees. I tried to yell, but my voice caught in my throat. I tried to move, but my legs were frozen. The eyes got closer and closer, the shadow spreading out around them. I could feel a coldness emanating from it, a malevolent presence that made my skin crawl. And then, it was gone, just like that, vanished into thin air. I took off running, not even thinking. I could hear my own ragged breathing, could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't look back, just kept my eyes on the trail and ran. I caught up to the other guys a few minutes later. They were standing around looking confused. "What's going on?" one of them asked, but I just shook my head. "Keep moving," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just keep moving." We hiked for hours after that, the sun dipping below the horizon. We didn't stop until it was completely dark, until we were sure we'd left it behind. And even then, we didn't dare to speak above a whisper. We made camp in silence as our eyes continued to scan the darkness. We didn't dare to have a fire, didn't dare to make a sound. We just sat there, huddled together, and waited for dawn. It was a long damn night. We packed up at first light, not even stopping to make breakfast. We hiked hard, our senses on high alert. We didn't say much, just kept our eyes on the trail and moved. It was late afternoon when we finally saw the trailhead. We didn't say a word, just kept hiking until we were back in the parking lot. And then we ran. We ran to the truck, threw ourselves inside, and locked the doors. We didn't stop until we were back in town, back in the bright lights and the safety of civilization. And even then, we didn't dare to look back. We never went back to those woods. We never spoke of that night again. But I'll tell you this, I still see those eyes. I see them every full moon, staring back at me from the shadows. And I know this, the shadow man is still out there, waiting. They say that if you go into the woods at night, the shadow man will get you. They say that if you see the yellow eyes, you're a goner. And I believe it. I believe it with every fiber of my being. The shadow man is real, and if you see those eyes, just run. Run like hell and don't look back. Because if the shadow man catches you, ain't nobody ever going to find you. Well, except for your heart. Thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button, and we'll notify you when the next story comes out.